So today I'm gonna dry age some ribeyes, some bone-in ribeyes at home. And what you need for this is you need some good quality meat. This is about a little over 3 pounds of meat here. And in order to dry age this, what you need obviously again is the meat, and you need salt. In this case, I'm using sea salt. Dry aging basically is a process of drawing out all the moisture in the meat so that the meat is concentrated with flavor. When we dry age this is going to shrink down a little bit because it's going to draw, that salt is going to draw the moisture out. I see a lot of people on YouTube dry aging their steaks for 4 days, 7 days, and I really can't see how that's working to develop flavor. You really don't get any flavor being developed in a steak unless you've aged it for at least 21 days, and even then the flavor that you're going to get is minimal. So I see a lot of people making a big deal about dry aged steak that's been dry aged for 7 days, and they're like, wow, it's the best thing ever. Again, you need 14 days just for the enzymes to stop breaking down the meat fibers. So I'm not really sure how some of these people on here claim that the steak is so good and they notice such a big difference after 7 days, when in reality you need at least 14 to 21 days to just get the beef to be tender. So I'm not really sure where they're getting these flavors from after 7 days. All right, so the first thing I like to do is dry it, pat it dry, which I have done this already, but I'm doing it again. Just dry it as much as you can, get that surface moisture out of the steaks. And then once you do that, the next step is to get yourself a plate. Pour in some sea salt in here, and be generous with it, because this is what's going to go ahead and pull out that moisture from the ribeyes, or from whatever cut of steak you're using. All right, so I placed the meat on the rack and on top of the plate, so you can see the salt is at the bottom. We want to make sure that the steaks are not touching each other and there's enough airflow all around. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this and put it in the coldest place in our refrigerator. All right, and we're going to let the dry age process begin, and we're going to be patient. That's all there is to it. Dry aging is very easy. There's different techniques for it. This is the true tested and proven method of doing it. All right, so let's go ahead and put this on our fridge. And while we're aging this in the fridge, in the coldest spot in the fridge, you really don't want anything around your meat, so that the meat doesn't take on the flavor of whatever foods are around there. So you really want to leave that meat by itself in one of the trays in the fridge. That's important. And now the process of aging has begun. We have the salt, and we just gotta wait now 21 days, and we'll see what happens after 21 days. So after 3 days, this is what it looks like. You can see that it has changed in color. It's a much deeper red. We'll continue to leave it here, and we'll see what happens. I put a little bit of baking soda right next to it in case there's any smells that come over here. Hopefully it'll pick it up and won't go to the meat. It is on a tray by itself with no food, so that's one of my concerns, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so after a week, this is what it looks like. You can see that the fat is changing. It's becoming a darker shade instead of the white where the fat used to be. It looks more fossilized, I would say, but you can see that the color really has changed dramatically. You're getting some ruby reds there, some darker reds, and again the fat has changed considerably. You can see that it's actually really become an aged steak. So again, this is after a week. Alright, so this is what it looks like after 2 weeks, and you can really see here how much more desiccated the steak is. You see the little indent at the top. There's a lot more bark all around, but you can see how the steaks are a lot more drier now. There's been a lot more moisture pulled out of the steak. And if you look here to the right now, you could see some peaks on top of this steak, and that's basically just fat that rose to the top. That fat is just fine. It's nothing to worry about. So after week 2, you can see the colors are a lot deeper than they were before, and you could just visually tell by looking at them that they have a lot less moisture, they have more of a bark all around. Alright, so after 21 days, this is what they look like. As you can see, they're very fossilized. They got a nice bark all around it. The shiny stuff that you see on one of the steaks here is just fat globulus, which is fine. And then on this piece of meat where you see the mold, that white mold, grayish white mold, is fine. That's actually called temnidium, and is a mold that helps break down the enzymes and give it flavor. So this mold that you see here is just fine. This typically you get this on an aged steak, and this usually starts happening about the third week, which is the 21 days. So again, this is fine. This mold that you see on here, and this shiny stuff that you see on this steak there, that's just basically fat globulus, which would then turn into that mold, which is temnidium, and that helps with flavoring and tenderizing it. All right, so now I have trimmed our steaks, and there is waste from this, as you can see. That's the waste. So that's one of the drawbacks of dry aging steaks, is you do have to trim out all the hard parts, the mold, the fat that rose to the top. So everything that's inedible, you have to pretty much remove, and what you're left over with is a nice piece of meat. And you could see the color of the meat is really intensified. It's not that pale red anymore. It's a darker red, and it's soft to the touch. If I touch this meat, as you can see here, it's really soft, which indicates that the meat's still good. Again, there is no odor on this whatsoever. You're just left with a nice piece of dry Asian meat, and by looking at the color of the meat, you can really tell that it's not fresh meat, that it's something has occurred to this meat, and in this case it's been dry aged for 21 days. You don't lose as much moisture as I thought you would lose. It has the appearance almost of cured ham if you look at the meat, but it looks great. So I just trimmed it out, trimmed all the bark out of the meat, all the hard parts that you're not going to eat, and again you're left over with this nice piece of meat that has the appearance of cured ham, and it just looks great. There is no foul odors from here. I don't smell anything bad. I mean, it's just a nice piece of soft meat that you're left over with. All right, what's left over from the meat after dry aging is the salt, and the moisture ended up here in the salt. I can't even, I'm trying to break this right here, and I can't. That's basically what you want to get. You want to get the moisture here in the salt. All right, so here we have the steaks. I've trimmed it, I cleaned it. I'm gonna let them rest a little bit so they're up to room temperature, and then I'm gonna go ahead and put them on the cast iron grill with a little bit of butter and some salt. And throw the steak on there. You got a nice caramelization on the meat. It looks beautiful right now. We'll do the same thing all around. We'll try not to overcook it. Try to shoot for a medium. We'll hit all the sides here. Still trying here to get it cooked. It's reading an internal temperature of about 120 right now, and it smells good. It's the enzymes did the proper job of breaking down the meat fibers, and you can really tell when you're flipping this thing over. So here we have it about a internal temperature about 140, give or take, and you can see how the steak is nice and seared, and it's just very tender and falling apart. I mean, you could just tell that it's definitely moist in there. As I'm poking at it, you can see how moist it is, and the fat is just rendered. It's definitely not the same as a regular steak. You can tell there's different characteristics going on of the steak that doesn't happen with fresh steak. So we'll go ahead and let it sit here for about a minute, let the juices spread out, and then we'll cut it up for you. All right, let's cut this and see what we have here. Go ahead and, oh, it's cutting like butter for sure. Oh yeah, look at that inside there. That is just beautiful. It's a beautiful color. I mean, it's definitely cutting like butter, and it's definitely not overcooked. And you can see the knife just slices right through it. Wow, that looks delicious. And you can see what's happening on the inside. Unlike a fresh steak, you don't get that blood in there. You get a different color of red in here. You don't get that blood flowing, or there's no blood actually coming out, as you can see. And it just cuts really nice. Here's the second steak. Waiting to hit internal temperature of 140 again. It's got a nice sear again on it. And this time I did put a little bit more salt to see if it brings out the flavor. I think you got to be generous with the salt when doing this. Wow, look at that. I did cook this one a little bit more, but you can still see how good it slices. And you can see inside it's very, very juicy, but there's no blood. Look at that juice just coming out of there. It's just spewing juice. And look at that. And you can see too, there's no marks that you would get normally on a fresh steaks, because the butter here has crystallized the meat and crusted it up, and you got a nice crust on it. Alright, so to recap what happened here, I aged the meat for 21 days, and really when I sliced it open, you could tell how beautifully cooked inside it was, and the texture of the steak did change. It was not as grainy as you would have on a non-aged fresh steak. But really what happened here, two lessons I've learned is, number one, I would probably get a bigger piece of meat to age it. I think aging individual steaks doesn't work quite as good, so you do need a big piece of meat in order to age it. So that's one thing I would do. And the next thing is, I was a bit disappointed that I didn't get these great flavor profiles that everybody describes online, even the people that are aging their steaks for 7 days. And then I came across this great article on SeriousEats.com, which I have put in the link in the description section. So they came to the same conclusion as I did, that after 21 days, you really don't gain any distinguished flavor. So I was hoping that I was going to get this great flavor aging at 21 days. And in reality, I really didn't. I mean, it tastes great, but I didn't notice anything spectacular or anything that would say to me, okay, this is aged beef. And reading this article, they did talk about that it wasn't until between 30 and 60 days that the real noticeable changes in flavor occurred. So again, I saw these videos online, and I'm thinking, okay, they're doing it for 7 days, 14 days. If I do it for 21 days, I'm going to get increased flavor. When in reality, that wasn't the case. Increased flavor only comes after 30 days. You did see that at the 3-week mark, I did get a little bit of mold, which is what should happen. A little bit of fat rose to the top, which should happen. There was no odor. I mean, I did everything right. I think the only thing I didn't do right was, again, I should have aged a large piece of meat, and I should have waited at least 30 days to get the flavor that I was looking for. And maybe that's what we'll do next time. We'll age it for 30 days instead of 21 days. So I hope that you don't make the same mistakes I made in this video. You choose a large piece of meat and you age it a little bit longer than 21 days. And hopefully this video has been informative for you, and you like the video. Please put a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I make videos about everything and anything. Thank you.